people of ancient Egypt contributed greatly to the success of the civilization. The Egyptians believed that their class system created a well-ordered society where everyone had a role to play in order to contribute to the success of the kingdom. Ancient Egypt's society can be separated into six parts as pharaohs, government officials, priests, scribes, artisans, and peasants. Pharaohs. Top of the social system hits pharaohs. They were the most powerful people in ancient Egypt. The pharaoh was the political, religious, and military leader in all land in ancient Egypt. Pharaohs lived the life with lots of luxury, large palaces, and all the resources of the land. Government officials. Next sits the government officials, and they also belong to the high class of ancient Egypt, and their job was to assist the pharaoh. Government officials usually come from the pharaoh family. Three of the most important government officials were the vizier, the chief treasurer, and the general of the army. The vizier was the chief judge of the society. The treasurer's main job was to collect the taxes. The general of the army advises the pharaoh in matters of war and helped to make alliances. Government officials also lived with full of luxury and often attended to lavish banquets. Priests. Priests were right below the government officials in ancient Egypt society. They were also powerful and highly respected. The high priest advised the pharaoh and oversaw all the religious ceremonies. Temple priests in charge of the temples throughout in Egypt. In these temples, the priest's job was to ensure that the god of the temple was taken care of. The priest also played an important role in burial practices. They oversaw the embalming and mummification processes. If these burial practices not done properly, the dead may not have a good afterlife. Scribe. Below the priests were the scribes. Scribes were pretty important because they were the ancient Egypt's official writers and record keepers. Only men were allowed to be scribes, and they came from all different classes. In order to become a scribe, you must attend scribe school and learn over 700 hieroglyphs. Scribes kept records of grain and food, track of the army soldiers, and the number of enemies killed in battles. Artisans. Artisans were the next one. Artisans were highly skilled laborers who created some of the most beautiful places of art in the ancient world. They rarely got the respect they deserved. Artisans generally specialized in carpentry, leatherworking, and sculpting. The most skilled artisans were stone carvers. They are the ones that create all the statues and engraving found around in Egypt. Although artisans were the masters of their craft, the upper classes looked at them as common laborers. They were not too respected. Peasants. Peasants were the lowest and the largest social class in ancient Egypt. These people were the unskilled people in ancient Egypt. Peasants grew crops, provided food to Egypt. They also helped to build monuments. The peasants worked all year. They allowed a reward at the end of the harvest season. They allowed to gather as much as leftover grain and keep it for themselves. Unfortunately for farmers, harvest came up short and they were brutally beat. Culture. In 1799, a stone tablet was found in near Rosetta, Egypt. The stone tablet was the key to understand Egyptian writings. This stone tablet had carvings on it, and that helped scientists to translate the millions of Egyptian characters carved on the monuments, painted on tombs, and written on scrolls. This became known as the Rosetta Stone, and archaeologists discovered the tombs inside the pyramids. They were able to see more clues about the ancient Egyptian way of life. musical instruments, paintings, and sculptures. The Egyptians told stories through art inside the tomb and huge murals. A lot of Egyptian culture revolves around the Nile River. Nile is the longest river in the world, running 4,000 miles. It is known for the fertile soil of its banks. Each year, Nile River floods from rain when it records the rich soil left behind. This soil is filled with valuable nutrients. Ancient Egyptians would plant crops near the Nile and they would have huge harvests. They often referred to these harvests in their artwork such as carvings of wheat. The Nile also provided the Egyptians with lots of mud for building homes. They would make bricks with mud and let them dry out in the hot sun. They would construct buildings with the bricks. Food. Ancient Egyptians ate vegetables such as onions, cucumbers, and leeks, and they were flavored the food with garlic. Their staple food were bread and beer. They liked flatbread the most and they ate flatbread commonly. They drank porridge commonly too. They used lots of sweeteners such as dates, figs, and honey to get a nice taste. They ate lentils and fish to get proteins which they want, and they often ate meat. They loved fruits, so grapes, dates, and pomegranate were very popular in ancient Egypt. Ancient Egyptians ate butter, cheese, and eggs too, and they ate their meals on bowls. Clothing. In ancient Egypt, the linen was the most common textile. It helped people to be comfortable in the subtropical heat. Linen is made from the flax plant by spinning the fibers from the stream of the plant. Spinning, weaving, and sieving were very important techniques for all Egyptian societies. The clothing was usually left in its natural color. Wool was known but considered impure. Only the wealthy wore animal fibers. They were used on occasions for overcoats but were forbidden in temples and sanctuaries. Peasants, workers, and other people of modest condition often wore nothing, but the shendy was worn by all people. Slavs often worked naked. The most common headdress was the cat or names, a stripped cloth worn by men. Children wore no clothing until 6 years old. Once they turned 6, they were allowed to wear clothing to protect them from the dry heat. A popular hairstyle among children was the side lock, an unshaved length of hair on the right side of the head. Even though children usually wore no clothing, they wore jewelry such as anklets, bracelets, collars, and hair accessories. Jewelry was very popular in ancient Egypt, no matter the social class. The main reason for wearing jewelry is because of its aesthetic function. The Egyptians were quite soberly dressed in white linen fabrics, and the jewelry offered a possibility for contrast. The Egyptian preference was towards the use of bright colors, lustrous stones, and precious metals. Gold was won in large quantities in the eastern deserts of Egypt, but silver was rare and imported from Asia. Therefore, it was silver that often considered more precious than gold. The eastern desert was also an important source for colorful semi-precious stones such as carnelian, amethyst, and jasper. There were several ancient Egyptian deities related to fabrics, clothing, and weaving, chiefly the god Hedjotep and goddess Tate. Glass and faience were favorites to replace rocks because they could be produced Egyptians became very skilled when making jewelry from turquoise metals like gold and silver and small beads. Both men and women adorned themselves with earrings, bracelets, rings, necklaces, and neck collars that were brightly colored. Those who could not afford jewelry made from gold or other stones would make their jewelry from colored pottery brick. Footwear was the same for both sexes. It consisted of coiled sandals of leatherwork or for the priestly class rest. Since Egyptians were usually barefoot, sandals were worn on special occasions or at times when their feet might get hurt. Education. Formal education in ancient Egypt was mostly reserved for the boys of wealthier families, although there is some evidence that occasionally girls did go to school, but usually they were homeschooled. Boys usually started school at the age of 7 and they were taught to read and write as well as mathematics. A recent discovery in ancient Egypt showed classrooms that were set up very similar to today's, and there were inscriptions on the walls about the rules for behaving property in class. Some schools were designed specific talents such as scribes. Most of the education for both boys and girls came from their mothers and fathers. For boys, they learned the family trade. For girls, they learned the household responsibilities including cooking, sewing, and some cases even taking care of the family business. If a boy was instructed in art of building or sculpture, his father would hope that his talent was exceptional enough for him to accept the part of tomb builders. If a boy failed to learn his trade well, he would be sent out of the village and would have to set up his life in another town. It seems that the lesson books called Kempti, which were designed vertically, children to learn and write in. A majority of Egyptian population did not receive any kind of formal education. Many of the people worked in the fields, and this type of job was passed down from father to son. It was a rarity that anyone escaped from the fate of their class and rose up to become educated or wealthy. The most important way that people of ancient Egypt were able to get around was through the use of boats and ships. Since they lived on Nile River, this way of transportation was very important. Trade was a huge thing during this time, and people would transport goods all around the country. The use of boats and ships was very important for this so that the goods could be taken where they needed to go. The boat that was made by ancient Egyptians had many parts. It had a stern, a bow, and a ladder, and boats could have cabins the people to ride in. The boats would move by the winds. When the wind would blow a certain way, the boat could travel in that direction. When boat would be traveling back north, they would use the currents and oars to help to guide and control the boat. One of the simplest boats that was around during ancient Egyptian times was the skiff. The boat was a simple boat that was made from cypress reeds and rope. The reeds were tied together with the ropes, and these boats would be used for the Egyptians to travel small distances on or to sit in the water and fish. There were also large ships that were made out of wood. They would be equipped with sails and oars for the Egyptians to be that they would be strong and would be able to carry heavier loads. Some of the ships would be made so that they could carry things such as blocks and stones to where the pyramids and temples were being built. The ships would be loaded up with these large stones and wooden, and then it would travel down the Nile River where the temple or pyramid was being built. Not only were the ships used for transporting people and goods, they were also used for ceremonies. Sometimes these ships would be used to move the images of the gods or goddess from one temple to another. The boats were also used during burial so that mummies could be taken to where they would be laid to rest in a tomb. The roads in ancient Egypt were sometimes small and dirt and full of rocks. People would have to use animals or chariots in order to get around on land. Some people would walk or ride in the backs of donkeys or oxen. Sometimes the donkeys or oxen would help to pull loads when people traveled. Doctors and medicine. The Egyptians were known for being highly advanced in medicine. Egyptian doctors were highly skilled. They invented their own medicine tools. Through reading hieroglyphs, archaeologists have learned that they used knives, hooks, drills, forceps, scales, spoons, and saws. The medical doctors in ancient Egypt were able to perform small surgeries with these tools. They know how to treat broken bones and many illnesses from stomach pains to eye disease. They use medicines made from many of the plants which grew by the river Nile and used honey as a common medicine. They realized that diet could be important in treatment of many ailments and gave their patients food supplements which are still used today, such as garlic and juniper berries, and they wrote a book called Abel's Papyrus to keep their medical recordings. In Abel's Papyrus, there are over 800 remedies. Language. One of the most notable things in ancient Egypt developed was their own written language. They wrote a series of pictures that explained stories and ideas. These pictures are called hieroglyphs. Archaeologists have been able to learn a lot about ancient Egyptian lives through reading hieroglyphs. Because they have written a language, they needed something to write on. The ancient Egyptians are one of the first civilizations to use paper. They would make paper out of the inside of the papyrus plant. This is how to write my name in hieroglyphs. Military. At the height of its power, Egypt needed a large, well-trained army to protect its wealthy cities from attack. The main weapons used were made from copper and bronze. The favorite weapon seems to have been a battle axe with a long curved blade. Other weapons include daggers and spears. Soldiers did not wear any armor and had only small wooden shields covered with leather for protection. Many soldiers wore magic charms to defend themselves instead. Pharaohs. In 3100 BC, the Pharaoh of Upper Egypt called Nama or Menes defeated the Pharaoh of Lower Egypt and united the two kingdoms. Nama became the first Pharaoh to rule over whole Egypt. During the Old Kingdom, the ancient Egyptians believed that their Pharaoh was the god Horus, the son of the god Ra, the sun god. The people of Old Kingdom of ancient Egypt believed that the pharaohs have special powers, such as being able to single-handedly defeat thousands of enemies on the battlefield. Another belief was that the snake on the high priests. They offered sacrifices to the gods and made offerings to the spirit of people who had passed into afterlife. They believed when a pharaoh died, their religious and political powers were passed on to the next in line to the throne. Usually, the pharaoh's oldest son. It was important that their body was mummified. Some pharaohs were buried inside pyramids and others were buried in tombs. They were buried with food, money, servants called ushari, and anything else they might needed in afterlife. Pyramids. Ancient Egyptians' art and culture continue to fascinate people even today. And one of the most impressive legacies they left behind is their pyramids. The Great Pyramid of Giza is the biggest pyramid in the world, and the complex of other pyramids and other structures on the Giza Plateau near Cairo, Egypt is a World Heritage Site because their importance for history, and these famous pyramids are not the only pyramids in Egypt. In fact, there are more than 100 of them, most much smaller, and many very damaged. At first, people were buried in the dry desert sand, but the graves were dug up by the wild animals and people who wanted to steal things they were buried with. Egyptians began to build flat tombs called mastabas out of mud bricks or stones. Then about 4,500 years ago, an architect named Imhotep had the idea to build a stack of mastabas on top of each other, each one smaller than the last. The result was what we call a step pyramid. After the step pyramid were constructed, a pharaoh named Snefu decided that he wanted a smooth-sided pyramid for his tomb. Snefu had 3 pyramids built before he was satisfied. The third pyramid, the Red Pyramid, is believed to be the first pyramid built in ancient Egypt. The pharaoh who followed Snefu, Khufu, decided to build his own pyramid bigger and better than the Red Pyramid. The result was the Great Pyramid of Giza. Construction of Great Pyramid of Giza likely took 10 and 20 years. It was originally 481 feet or 146.5 meters high, making it the tallest man-made structure on Earth for nearly 4,000 years. The Great Pyramid, estimated to be made of 2.3 million blocks of stone. The largest of these blocks weighed between 25 and 80 metric tons and were transported from more than 500 miles or 800 kilometers away. The pyramid was encased in polished white limestone. Most of these stones have been removed over the millennia, meaning that when pyramid was new, it would have looked very different than it does today. The other 2 large pyramids on the Giza Plateau was built by Khufu's son, the pharaoh Kharpe, and his grandson, the pharaoh Menkaure. Kharpe's pyramid complex includes a unique feature, the Great Sphinx, a huge guardian statue with the head of a man and the body of a lion. Deep inside the pyramids lay burial chambers for the pharaoh's body and many treasures and items they would need for the afterlife. The pharaohs knew that their treasures would be desired by robbers, and so they tried to guard them. Sometimes they used fake burial chambers or hidden passages to keep thieves out, but unfortunately most of their treasures were stolen long ago. Still, the pyramids themselves remained 3000 BCE, the authority to perform these tasks was controlled by the Pharaoh, who claimed to be the deity's representative and managed the temples where the rituals were carried out. The deity's complex characteristics were expressed in needs and entails regarding the intricate relationships between deities, family ties, loose groups, and hierarchy, and the combinations of separate deities into one. The diverse appearances of deities in art as animals, humans, objects, and combinations of different forms also alluded through symbolism to their essential features. Here are some major deities of ancient Egypt. The end. Thank you for watching this video.